This is the Total Perspective Vortex. I'm Tragula,
And I'm Christian.
and it's June 22nd, 2020. It, we're so we have some cool updates here today. You'll see, like I actually added some icons for you. So
Very nice.
we have me and Tragula in the Total Perspective Vortex, and we have you, the Christian host. You get
That's
it?
right.
Christian host.
I
Wah
see,
wah.
I see what you did there. Yeah. I can see you put a lot of effort. This was, yeah,
Yeah,
nice.
yeah,
Yeah. There's our entire budget for the month.
yeah. Yeah. So, Christian, usually we talk a little bit ahead of time. I give you a heads up of what's going on, and I did have an idea after the weekend what I wanted to talk about. But then someone shared something with me on Discord, and it just threw the plans out the window. And I felt that I should share it with you, and this is what we should talk about during the show.
I'm
And
scared.
so here is the article that was shared to me, and I'll just let you give your reaction here.
Okay, what do we have here? So, oh, geez. So, Lenin's statue to be unveiled in Germany despite legal fight. While a global row rages over the controversial pasts of historical figures, immortalized as statues, on Saturday, a divisive new monument to the former Soviet leader Vladimir Lenin will be unveiled in Germany. Why?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to the article, but that gives you the context in the show. So for weeks, we've been tearing down statues
Right.
of Thomas Jefferson, George Washington. We've been defacing Winston Churchill
Winston Churchill, yeah.
and Gandhi and numerous others. At the same time, we're putting up statues to Lenin. And people keep on telling us this has nothing to do with communism.
Yeah, so I mean, you want my reaction? All I'm doing is nodding my head. No, I don't know how to take this. I mean, obviously I do, because, like you said, it is about communism. But whether Lenin was worse, you can make the argument that Lenin was worse than Hitler, right? And so,
Oh, I got more.
okay, all right, let's keep
I got
going.
an excerpt from the quote from the article, but I just wanted to sort of prime you here. So then, actually, let's go with and let's start with the quote here of what was it actually said in the article.
So, the time for monuments to racists, anti Semites, fascists, anti communists, and other relics of the past has clearly passed. Okay. Lenin was an ahead of his time thinker of world historical importance, an early fighter for freedom and democracy. That doesn't, I don't even know what that means. I don't even. Freedom and democracy. Yeah. How he fought Winston,
Yeah,
well,
yeah,
obviously.
yeah. So they're definitely drawing the context, and this is a political leader in Germany. This is someone who was elected to office saying this, right? So the time for monuments to racist, anti-Semites, fascist, and anti-communists and other relics of the past is clearly past.
No,
And Lenin was ahead of but you see there. So there's an agenda behind this, right? And it's amazing to me that like people are not catching on to what's going on. It's not that amazing because it's too terrifying. You know, people have optimism bias, and if you don't like optimism bias is like things will turn out. Things are not as bad as they seem. And we've been coasting on optimism bias on our institutions for the last 30 years, right? As communists have infiltrated and taken power, we've let them get away with just saying, "Oh, I'm not really a communist. Oh, we're just tearing the statue down because of racism." Right? It's
I wonder if is that the case, or is it trickier? Is it trickier just because if you don't know that there is these communist forces coming out, it takes a lot to build a worldview around that, right? If you're not quote unquote say red pilled, and you're not seeing this across the board, like it's like, oh, the communists are taking over, or it's hard. I can see a certain resistance to that, and not so much that the world is going okay, but that I guess it has that tinfoil hat kind of vibe to it.
Yeah,
wouldn't you agree? Yeah.
Well, the tinfoil. Why does it have a tinfoil hat kind of vibe to it, right? Because of the optimism bias. Because you think, well, I don't want to raise the alarm too quickly. I think, and another side of that is I don't have a better proposition. Like this is a key thing of how things get done. And Jocko Willink points this out. Like if you want to get things done in a committee or a group or a team, show up with a plan. Right? Have like a prepackaged plan for people, and people will the group will just generally adopt your plan because it's there, it's easy for people to grasp. And right. A lot of the time, the communists have been the ones showing up with the plan. The neo-Marxists have been they've captured academia. They have people churning out this garbage, and so they show up to all these committee meetings with a plan, and people then just embrace the plan. Doesn't even have to be a good plan, but it's a prepackaged plan. So a lot of it has been laziness. A lot of it has been the intentional disconnection with the past. So they slowly disarm us, right? So that's what the whole critical theory is about. Is like you poke holes in in historical figures, right? So, like for example, the idea of Churchill. They'll say like, well, Churchill oversaw this or did this bad thing, right? And they'll say, so he's equal to Lenin, or he's just as bad as what they'll start as. He's not a hero because he's done this bad thing, but they won't hold that same comparative measure. Like they'll brush off quickly anything that Lenin's done because he's inside it. Like it's it's a tribal thing again, right? It's the tribalism, the bad form tribes. Lenin is part of the tribe, so he's forgiven and he can be a saint. Churchill is not part of the tribe, and this is one of the ways that they turn some of the, like I've talked before, the best parts of the Christian ethic is taking responsibility for one's sins and prior actions and making amends and atoning. So right. They'll point to Western liberal leaders, and they'll say, oh, well, he did this bad thing, and then so you have to atone for that, right? And they take that idea of atonement too far. And then they don't really have a mechanism for forgiveness in their woke religion, and that's intentional because they're trying to memory hole these people. They're trying to destroy the past. So they use the existing mechanism of people trying to make amends, but there is no way to make amends. You can't apologize to the people because they're not playing a game where where forgiveness is an option, right? Or it's just a way of, like, once you sort of submit them to their mercy, you'll discover very quickly that they have no mercy.
Yeah. For me, the big thing that I run, so I don't feel capable right now to have that discussion with people. Say the average person that doesn't, that isn't on Twitter all day, let's say, is, so I see these things at I don't want to say at the margins, maybe at the margins in terms of in the media, if you will, but it's hard to have that conversation with people because it's hard to give them a full picture, because it's always, I feel like from the media we get these little bits here and there. There's a little bit of communism, like BLM now, I think it's 3 of the founding members individually have said that they are what do they say? They say trained Marxist?
Trained Marxist.
Trained
Marxist
right.
activists.
Right, they're community organizers, right? They're, I get what that means, but they're saying the same thing. We're trained Marxists. And so, but yeah, I don't know how to have that conversation with people. I don't know how to show them that full picture within a short amount of time and not come off as that tinfoil hat type.
Well, that's what
person.
I'm building, right? Like because I feel the communists have been slowly loading the language against us, the neo-Marxists, and loading the frames. Like they've been changing the definitions of words like racism,
right,
or feminism.
Well, tried to anyway. Yeah.
And like even words like politically correct came from the Soviet Union, right? So it's these things that become ubiquitous in their culture, and they're doing the damage they were intended to do. So, and part of the reason they can do that damage is why I started the Total Perspective Vortex, because there is a weakness in the way we set up our Western civilization, in that we've lost connection with our virtues and our morality. We have this disconnect. So that's why they can attack us with cultural relativism. Because like with the liberal system, we have we have our individual morality, and we have this tolerance of you do you, I do me, and we make it work within our society. But we have no way to assess invaders and help them incorporate. I'm using the term invader because like invasive cultures or ideas, that because we have this, we don't have a good way to set the boundary of what is and isn't acceptable. So how do you incorporate Muslim extremists into a Western liberal democracy? How do you incorporate Marxists into a Western liberal democracy? How do you argue against them when you're fundamentally, you have this idea of freedom? And why is that good, and what are the bounds on that, right? So we have this problem, and this is why I think that you see, and this is what's terrifying me in the scare in the public square, is like you have this rapid within the politicians who've embraced the neo-Marxism to various degrees. You'll see that they have this passion in the way that they talk, and they speak from a place of moral authority when they're talking about the tearing down the statues. Like it's time for BLM. Like they have like this energy about them, and it comes from a place of moral indignation. Where you'll see that the conservative leaderships or the right-wing politicians are very tepid.
Absolutely, yeah.
Right? And people complain about that. It's like, why aren't you standing up for Western democracy? And it's because they've lost that spiritual connection, right? And a part of it is that we're running on the fumes of Christianity. I think that's from Nietzsche. Western civilization was built on this sort of the spiritual framework, but we've, for good reasons, secularized and taken that language out of the public square. But we've gone too far with that, right? And we haven't sort of, because there needs to be that the moral impetus, the spiritual impetus for Western civilization, and that's why why our politicians, or the politicians arguing for the good of Western civilization, are so tepid, are so mealy-mouthed in comparison to the righteous indignation of the neo-Marxists, or the partial neo-Marxists, because they've lost their moral authority, but it is there. They've just lost connection with it, and that's what what we're trying to rebuild here. So, I mean, you can watch a big part of it is I put a 4 or 5 minute video out, the first Total Perspective Vortex in 5 minutes, where I talked about the excesses of compassion, and that's a big part of how we can start attacking the communist ideals, is to point out that there is an excess, and have a good delineation of what line they're crossing.
Right. Is that what I find? One of my personal interests is how memeable is something. Is that? Do you think that that's sufficiently memeable to say, look, they just care too much, or how would you frame it? And maybe this is just a reiteration of the past podcast, but
Yeah, I mean it remains to be seen how memeable it is, but it's the start of making something memeable, and I am very aware of that, and that's why I'm referencing is compassion can go too far. Compassion needs to be balanced by wisdom, because that changes the nature of the conversation. Right, we have to bring them back into the world of what is possible before their desire to judge everything and tear everything down goes too far.
So is that what, I won't say conservatives, I'll say more the right. Is that what the right has to do? Is maybe, because the big thing that I find that the right are not doing well, and I'm taking this directly from Peter Thiel, but there are versions of the world that are being sold to us. And, there's, Sharia law, global Sharia law, just kind of full takeover, and that's maybe not a good outcome for women. There is kind of the Chinese, and I'll use his words, Eye of Sauron type AI, managed kind of social score, AI monitoring you, and so on. And then there's kind of what the communists are promoting, broadly speaking. So it's conservatives, conservatives, or I should say the right, needs to have their own sales pitch, their own vision of the world. I think President Trump does that to a certain degree with, say, with America, and how we have a new golden age almost. Like he's selling. I don't think he articulates it well enough. But
honestly, I don't think.
But is that what they just to finish the? So is that what they should be selling? Is it that wisdom versus compassion? Should they be selling the wisdom aspect?
Yes, but more to it. What the right is very good at is establishing and following rules. And the right can also go too far. And when I'm talking about this, I talk about the extent how wisdom can be in excess. But people have a more intuitive understanding of that, because it becomes tyrannical and it's in certain ways easier to see. But what the right has to do is they have to bring the compassion, the left, back into alignment, right? So they have to establish the bounds and call the left out when they're out of bounds is key. So they have to start saying that these things are impractical. They can't start humoring people. They have to bring it back and say, they have to learn how to say no. And not only no, but if you try and get that, then you are doing harm. Right? Because it's not possible. What you're asking for is a contradiction. And they've done a good job of pulling that sort of thinking out of society, but we have to start putting it back in. It's not going to be easy. Now, there's one other way that I wanted to point out, I wanted to get today to talking about this, and I think it's important because you want to take some of the energy out of the momentum of the left, and this partially answers your question as well. So one of the reasons the left and neo-Marxists feel so justified in tearing everything down and just assuming that their utopia will take the place is that Marx highlighted, and progressives believe in this myth of progress, that we're always history progresses always in a positive direction, and whenever we tear things down, something better takes its place. Right? So that's a big part of why they feel so vindicated in tearing things down. Right? I think people on the right are more aware of that sophisticated systems take a lot of energy to build, and if you tear them down, you better have something good to replace them with. Right. And there's countless examples of civilizations that when they were torn down or they fell apart, they were not replaced by something better. They just ended.
Right.
So, and this is what we have to hit home is, and this is like, that's what the conservatism, there's value in the existing system. But we have to get rid of this myth that if we tear society down, if we tear Western civilization down, we're going to end up with something better. So you can replace the Shah and end up with being replaced with a theocracy. Before the Chinese Communist Revolution, China was in this constant state of perpetual revolutions where new warlords would take over. For there's a whole period, right? So or you can end up as Somalia, like this idea that you're going to end up with something better, especially when you're looking to the past. And this is key, is that our social science has completely fallen dead. Like they're still looking to and appealing. Well, they're putting new glosses on it. They're talking about postmodernism and intersectionality, but it's all ways of rebranding the same 18th century crap, right? We're still talking about Lenin, like Lenin's revolution, and still appealing to Mao like they were a good thing. Like they've just rebranded the same old ideas that failed, and failed hard for those societies.
Catastrophically.
Right, yeah. So that's the key thing, is this whole idea that, and this is what drives them, is if we tear it down, what replaces it is going to be better. And society is going to move in some progress. Well, we're not necessarily going to progress. That illusion of progress falls apart very quickly, and things can collapse down. And I think that's a big part of what we have to get across, is like, look, if you're more likely to do more damage than good. It's not only that things are likely to be worse when they collapse. The things could possibly collapse, but they're more likely to be worse than they are now.
Of course, right. Of course.
And that's sort of intuitive to us, but that's not intuitive to the leftist thinking. So that's ways you can call them out. Right. Take care, Christian.
Take care. Cheers.